Do that.
It's a Saturday afternoon for some of us, and the further west you go, it may be a Saturday morning. My name is Dr. Wanda Lipscomb, and I serve as the Associate Dean for Student Affairs here at the Michigan State University College of Human Medicine. We thank you so much for tuning into this conversation with us today. Our focus today is really to try to help you as a loved one, a significant other, a person who is a spiritual partner to a medical student who's a part of our entering class, to have a snapshot view of what their journey will look like this year. We have had the delight to be interacting with this wonderful class of 2024. We have been in session with them for the last 10 days, and we're looking forward to our closeout tomorrow with our virtual white coat ceremony. Dina, could you advance the slide? So our agenda today is really to try to give a very brief background on the College of Human Medicine. The bulk of our time will be spent doing an overview of what our curriculum is, our shared discovery curriculum. We will be talking about expectations of the students, and we will be talking about how you may be able to assist your student as they go along the way. And then we also will have a panel discussion with several of our second year and third year students who are joining us, who will be able to talk some about what their journey's been like, as well as answer questions for you. We do encourage you to use the chat function. So if you have a question, if you would put it into the chat, then we will do our very best to get all of those questions answered for you. Next slide. So just a bit of a background about the College of Human Medicine. We still consider ourselves a relatively younger medical school. We were established in 1964. We are here at Michigan State University, which is one of the historic land-grant universities. Land-grant universities were focused on providing access to education for the broad populace. When we were established in 1964, from the very beginning, we became a community-based medical school. And what I mean by that is we have our medical education being delivered at multiple sites around the state of Michigan. We have always been a part of the communities in which we deliver our education. It means that that our students will not always be in the same place for the entire time that they're in medical school.
No.
So for this year's entering class, your student is either in the East Lansing community or the Grand Rapids community, because we train our first and second year students in those communities, and I'm sure they've talked to you about that. Our medical school was really developed to meet the needs of the state of Michigan. And we have a very diverse state. So we have a part of our state that's very rural. And very early on in the operation of the college, we began to train students in the Upper Peninsula, in Marquette and Escanaba in 1974. We also have a very, very urban mission. And so we train students in Grand Rapids and Flint and Southeast Michigan, and all of those kind of campuses are more like have an urban flavor. We have residency programs that spread across the state. Another point that's important to know is the College of Human Medicine has always had a significant percentage of students who come from out of state. Significant meaning about 20% of our class. And if you were to look at where our alumni are, in addition to being very, very strong in the state of Michigan, we also have pockets of alumni that you will find on the West Coast, pockets of alumni that you'll find on the East Coast. And that really is related to how over time our students have come from across the country. What aligns this all for us is that our mission of the medical school is the centering theme. So although we may have students who are not from Michigan, what they are committed to is service to community, serving underserved populations, being prepared to be the finest primary care physicians they can be, secondary, tertiary care physicians that they can be, taking into account the importance of the patient. So a lot of focus for us is on that patient relationship. Next slide. So this social mission of service to people is what remains central for us. It's central in the decisions that the admissions committee makes. It is central in our curriculum. It is central in us creating special certificate programs. And you can also see that centrality in our requirement that our students be a part of service learning as they go through the curriculum. Next slide. So what does it mean to be community-based? We train in community-based hospitals. We have a wide base of community faculty. We have our 2 campuses for first and second year. And then for third and fourth year, we have 7 different community campuses. Next slide. So I would like to introduce to you Dr. Diane Wagner. Dr. Wagner is the interim Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Medical Education here at the college. In layman's terms, Dr. Wagner is the person who is responsible for the oversight of all of our educational programs. And she is going to spend time with us today talking about the shared discovery curriculum. And with that, I turn the mic over to Dr. Wagner.
Thank you, Dr. Lipscomb. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It is lovely to spend time with everyone this afternoon. We are spending time together in a bit of a different way these days, but nevertheless, it is an important time, and I'm really glad that you're here, and hopefully I can be very helpful to you as you understand what your students will be able to experience over the next few years as a member of our College of Human Medicine faculty. I mean, family. They're not faculty yet, but they'll be a family member and already are. Just a little bit more about me. I am a general internist, so I have spent my patient care career taking care of adults and doing primary care for adults for about 40 years. And as we envisioned this shared discovery curriculum, the group of faculty and staff that got together initially talked about what was most important and most affecting in their education and what we wanted to do the most of in the new curriculum, and it was experiences with patients or faculty or both. So the shared discovery curriculum, as Dr. Lipscomb said, is all about putting the patient in the center of our education and having faculty have experiences with our students as they interact with patients and learning everything they need to learn to be excellent new residents in 4 years with that patient in the center. This fan shows you over the course of the first, second, third, and fourth year that they go through an early clinical experience. Their first year have a set of intercessions. In the second year, we call it the middle clinical experience, and I will tell you more about that. There's another short intercession before they take a important licensing examination, then have their first real break in the second summer, and then come back to do their third and fourth year, which is filled with disciplinary clerkships and taking care of patients in the hospital and in our outpatient environments, and doing electives that help them understand what they want to pursue as residents, take another licensing exam, and then graduate in May of their fourth year. So that is our shared discovery curriculum fan. It was initially a circle, and we all looked at it and thought that it looked endless, and so then decided to create a half circle instead. I'll let you advance the slide now, Dr. Wilbanks. So the core principles of our curriculum are the fact that we fully integrate our basic social, disease, and patient care sciences over 4 years. A typical medical school of 10 years ago, and most medical schools are not like this anymore, was 2 years of science learning, often in the classroom, and then the third and fourth year were about patient care experiences. We have brought clinical experiences with patients into the first year. By week 10 of the curriculum, your students will be with real patients in real environments, being a part of their care. And we have brought the basic social and disease sciences into the fourth year, where we still care whether our students are applying basic and social science and ethics to the care of patients before they become new residents. So that is actually very different. I've already mentioned that they start seeing patients in week 10 of the curriculum, and we get them ready for that by having a robust simulation environment, which I can talk about a little bit more later. We use something called progress testing. There is constant feedback to your student on how they are doing, but tests that count only twice a semester. In our legacy curriculum, students sometimes had 2 and 3 tests a week in the first year. And this sort of binge and forget methodology is often something people have brought with them from the undergraduate environment. But it's not a good way to remember things and to really put them into your memory banks. Progress testing has been shown to do that better and also to decrease stress. And so we made an intentional decision to decrease the stress of our testing environment by using progress testing. We have a wonderful software program that provides a roadmap and drives the curriculum. A great deal of the curriculum is in the palm of your student's hand, literally on their phone. And a lot of the activities that they do and the things that need to go into their portfolio of accomplishments is done through this wonderful software that was a creation of one of my colleagues about 15 years ago, and that we have augmented for use in the shared discovery curriculum. The other piece that's very important is the relationship building part of our curriculum. We have a learning society structure with small scholar groups, and that builds sturdy faculty relationships that help support success and resilience for your students. Next slide, please. I talked about progress testing briefly. Tests that count occur only twice a semester during a approximately 3-week window. Progress testing actually aims at what a graduating student should know. So even though your students are used to getting A's on pretty much everything, in a progress test situation, the very first year you take a progress test aimed at a graduating student, you don't get an A, you get a fairly low score that is predictable. So it's a different way of thinking about your learning, and will require a bit of getting used to for your students. As I said, there are lots of check your understanding assessments along the way, weekly questions, questions during various segments of the curriculum, all sorts of ways that your student is provided with a sense of how well they're doing, and then faculty and staff who also help them understand their strengths and weaknesses along the way. Next slide, please. This is an example of a week in the life of your student. Their Monday morning starts with the only time the entire class is all together in one place. We call it a large group activity. They have, by week 10, 2 half days in a clinic, an outpatient clinic, taking care of patients with the team. They do a virtual imaging lab and a gross anatomy lab. They discuss their clinic experiences in the blue 2-hour segments we call post-clinic group, and I'll say a little bit more about that in the next slide. They have a half a day of time in our simulation center where they are with basic scientists, clinicians, standardized patients, authentic patients, each other, learning and practicing in safe environments, the skills they need to move out into the clinic and to become excellent doctors. You can see there's something called a weekly formative assessment slotted in on Friday afternoon. It's a bank of questions that they take to see if they've done good work in the prior week. And then there are times when they have independent study, preparatory and guided learning is what we're calling it. There are some required events on Wednesday evenings and some optional groups that happen on other evenings of the week. Next slide, please. You're well aware that we are starting your students in an unusual, unprecedented environment of a pandemic. And so we are lucky that even though the university as a whole for undergraduates has gone completely virtual, it is recognized that you cannot become a doctor virtually, that there are certain things that are essential of physicians that must continue if we are going to train our precious healthcare workforce of the future, and your students are a part of that precious healthcare workforce of the future. So what this slide does is label what at this point is going to be done remotely and in person. The large group activity will be done remotely. The virtual imaging lab and gross anatomy lab will be done remotely. Certainly their preparatory and guided learning can be done remotely. What will not be done remotely is simulation. And in the simulation centers, we will be utilizing all of the ways that we mitigate and minimize risk to be together with our standardized patients and staff and faculty and students. And I'll talk more about that later, but that will be happening in person. And then when your students go into the healthcare environment, their outpatient clinics in week 10, that will also be done in person. Because again, there are certain things that cannot be done remotely if you're going to become a doctor. I'm going to draw your attention to the post-clinic group 2-hour segments. They are the bright blue. One of them says remotely and one of them says in person. It is actually the fact that both of those will be remote as of just a few days ago. If there is one thing that is certain during this time of COVID, things change rapidly. And you may be aware that last week, the week before last, the plan was for students to return to the university. That decision was changed just a few days ago. And with that change, some of the principles by which we decided what would be done remotely and what would be done in person changed. And so for the time being, both of your students' small scholar groups will be done remotely, and we'll be reevaluating that as time passes. So we are doing things that must be done in person, and things that can be done virtually. Next slide, please. There has been a great deal of planning around COVID-19 and how we keep our students, patients, faculty, staff, families, and communities safe. We are the college that had students back on campus in late June. Our middle clinical experience, or second-year students, began that segment of their education in late June, and they have been having remote as well as in-person, in-hospital, and outpatient experiences since June. We were required to create extensive plans that helped the highest ups in the university feel confident that we were mitigating risk to our students our patients, our faculty, our staff, our families, and our communities. And so I want you to be very confident that we have been thoughtful in all sorts of ways so that the essential experiences that must be done in person are done safely, using screening techniques so that we keep the virus out of our learning environment, using hygiene of both personal hygiene, students washing their hands, sometimes actually changing their clothes, and our environment being cleaned on a regular basis. We are using social distancing whenever possible, and we are using personal protective equipment that minimizes the risk of transmitting this virus. And again, we have many stakeholders to take care of: our students, your students, our patients, our faculty, our staff, families, and our whole community's safety depends on us being very careful about this. And I want you to feel very confident that we have been. We have a series of communications going out on a weekly or bi-weekly basis that are labeled "Spartans will take care of each other." And you know, the phrase "Spartans will" has been utilized by Michigan State for several years now. Spartans will take care of each other is the way that we think about how we do the essential work we have to do safely. Next slide, please. So some things for you to understand about expectations for your students. Your students have signed up for a difficult path. It's a wonderful path. It's a wonderful career. It's a wonderful profession. It is a difficult one. They have scheduled time for classes and clinic about 24 hours a week. They have that guided learning and study we showed you on that slide of their week in their life. They have preparation time because for each thing in the curriculum, they must prepare so that they can engage in that curricular experience fully. We believe that every student needs to spend about 70 hours with a range of between 60 and 80 hours a week. And this is a great deal of work to be done and something that your students are going to need to adjust to. Next slide, please. As a part of helping them adjust to that and guiding them through this significant adjustment in their lives, we have our learning societies. Each student has entered as a part of one of our 4 learning societies. Students and faculty are together in that learning society, developing the relationships that we think help your student feel welcome, help your student feel like there's someone who knows them, help your student feel like they have someone who has their best interests at heart always, and that hopefully will improve the sort of adjustment to this new and difficult education they've started. The students' post-clinic group faculty actually act as coaches. They follow their progress, advising them, helping them create individualized learning plans to keep improving. And there are one-to-one meetings several times a semester. A very important part of becoming a professional is the ability to understand your own strengths and challenges. And we start doing this right from the get-go, having students with their faculty sit down twice a semester, think about what's going well, think about what could go better, and to create actual plans to improve things that could be going better. I mean, if you think about it, we're students for some number of years, and most of the time that we practice in our professions, whatever they are, nobody's watching except us. So one of the important parts of this curriculum is to help our students, with the benefit of their faculty coaches, develop that important skill set. Next slide, please. This is a diagram of our learning societies. The 4 of them are named after influential and important educators and citizens of the world who cared about not just education, but about the welfare of the human race. John Dewey, Justin Smith Morrill, Daniel Hale Williams, and Jane Addams. So each of your students is a part of one of these learning societies. They have a 7 or 8 person scholar group. They have their lead faculty fellows and other team fellows of clinicians and basic scientists. And they get to wear orange or red or yellow or purple as a part of being a part of those groups. Next slide, please. If you remember the FAN, there was the early clinical experience followed by a little 3-month span of what we call intersessions, short sessions that take place from March to May at the end of year 1 and March and April of the end of year 2. They have some choice in what to pursue, and it is a chance to reinforce areas of weakness, explore areas of interest. And then at the end of the second year, there is actually a step 1 board review intersession that launches them into a study period so that they can take step 1 before they take a well-deserved summer off or do something else interesting at the end of the second year. Next slide, please. In the second year, they start in July and go through March of 2022. They have clinical rotations where they take care of patients with the healthcare team. They switch every 1 to 4 weeks and spend an average of 3 half-days in patient care. So a little more than the first year, which is 2 half-days. This is very much medical student-like. It includes evening, early morning, and sometimes weekend shifts. Medical education and the calendar have never gotten along very well, either on a weekly or a monthly or a holiday-like basis. And that's just another piece of what we have all signed up for in the healthcare field. They continue with small groups, simulation, and large group activities. It is a very busy year. It is designed to carefully and intentionally knit the basic and social science they need to be excellent physicians and prepare for their boards with actual patient care. One of the phrases I think many physicians will resonate with is that the patient is the best mnemonic. If you want to remember something, learn it while taking care of patients. And the shared discovery curriculum has utilized that principle throughout the 4 years. Next slide, please. If you look down the road a couple of years, our third-year students rotate through core clerkships, pediatrics, medicine, family medicine, OB/GYN, surgery, and psychiatry. Some of the pieces of those clerkships were accomplished in the second year, but some of them were not. And so these are either a 4 or 8 week length, depending on that. The schedule is extremely variable with night call, weekends, and longer shifts. This is where really the schedule of a medical student begins to resemble the schedule of a resident. They take step 2 exams generally in the summer at the end of the third year. It is exciting, absorbing, interesting, but long hours. And then the fourth year includes those rotations and electives and applying to residencies. Another busy year. Next slide, please. So that is sort of the structure of what is going to transpire for your students over the next 4 years. Now we're going to talk a little bit about something that the College of Human Medicine has embraced since its founding, which is the biopsychosocial model.
Dr. Wagner, may I interrupt you for just a moment?
Absolutely.
There was a question in the chat that asked a little bit about the constitution of the learning societies and scholar groups. If you could comment a little bit about how students are assigned and what that process entails.
Okay. That's an excellent question. The Learning Society groups are constituted. We ask your students some questions about their experiences, their previous training, their clinical experiences, whether or not they've, spent time as a physician's assistant versus having come right out of an undergraduate environment where it was coursework with very little exposure to actual patient care. And what we try to do is basically make sure that there is as much diversity as possible in each group, sort of sharing the collective experiences of our entering students, so that there will be as rich as possible exchange of ideas and experiences in those small groups as they form. Any other questions that would be helpful to answer right now?
Nothing else right now. Thank you, Dr. Wagner.
All righty. All right, then let's talk about the biopsychosocial model. This term was coined by George Engel in the late 1970s. The bio referring to sort of the scientific biologic functioning of the body, how the liver works, how the heart works. The psycho referring to the mental functioning and decision making and how it affects illness. We sometimes talk about disease as opposed to an illness. And that illness piece also brings in the social factors within the context of a community, a family, a culture, religion, and socioeconomics. So what a patient is experiencing and what a physician needs to understand is all three of these pieces. The biologic mechanisms and the psychological functioning and decision-making within the context of community, family, culture, religion, and socioeconomics. So the illness is all of these things, as opposed to a disease, which is often just about the biology. And I think the College of Human Medicine adopted this early on. Most other medical schools now purport this, but we have really embraced it, and our entire structure of our competencies for medical school are described within the bio, psycho, and social aspects of illness. Next slide, please. So let's use this model to think about the challenges for students getting used to a very different lifestyle. The biologic challenges of being a medical student, getting into a routine that allows enough sleep, healthy eating, and exercise. Part of the adoption of progress testing was to try to eliminate that all-nighter thing that students tend to do, or the last-minute binge studying that students who have to take individual tests frequently have often experienced as an undergrad specifically. We are hopeful that with our week of 24 hours scheduled and other time able to be scheduled by the student, that your students can get into a routine that helps them be healthy. Learning is biologic. If there is a bio piece here, it's that your brain builds new microtubules, it's chemistry, and that learning actually involves changing the brain, and that in order for microtubules to be built, that brain needs sleep and food and exercise and time to refresh. And so it is important to the learning of our students and your students that they get into a routine that enables them to learn to the best of their ability. So you can help by supporting your students' efforts to find a healthy schedule. You can check before scheduling family activities that might disrupt the schedule or stress their ability to get sufficient sleep or eat healthfully or get their exercise. And of course, a meal or a snack cooked by a real person is always gratefully accepted, and more easy to wash dress clothing will help with daily needs. So those are some really concrete things you can do, but learning is biologic, and a stressed, sleep deprived, hungry organism doesn't learn as well as a well-rested, well-fed, exercising organism. So that is the goal for the bio piece. Next slide, please. The challenge for the psychology is maintaining mental and emotional energy. This is a marathon, not a sprint. It's a long road. You don't tend to close up a book, put it away, and say, I'm done. You're really never completely done with something. You're on a road to competence that really is again, a marathon. How can you help your student? There will be times when that marathon feels daunting. It probably feels daunting right now to get started. But once your student is acclimated and weeks have gone by, it can be hard to remember why you signed up for this. So help your student remember why they are going to medical school, that they want to be a part of a wonderful profession that will enable them to do good and help people, and to cling to that in the tough times that will inevitably come. Hopefully will be short, but will be inevitably there. You can be a sounding board as your student processes things and problem solves issues, and you can just provide your acceptance and love, and remind them that whatever happened yesterday or last week is not the sum of who they are, that they are wonderful, worthwhile people, and that all wonderful, worthwhile people have a bad week or a bad day or a bad test or a bad situation that they have to sort of solve. So being there for them to remind them why they're doing this and that they are wonderful to be doing it will be helpful. Next slide, please. So we've done bio and psycho, and then the social will be maintaining relationships and connections. Some of those connections with you, others with friends and their interests. You have to be realistic that some things, you can't do everything all at once. People say you can have it all, and I think you can probably have it all, but probably not all at the same time. So plan ahead and think about setting time aside for family and relationship time, but realizing that there will be times that your student cannot participate because they have competing needs for study or for participating in required activities. And so thinking ahead and understanding that you can probably have it all, but maybe not all in the same week or same month, is just a fact of life, will be helpful, I think, for everyone. Next slide. A few specifics. Planning big events. Families have big events that you want everyone to be present for. Think about planning these during breaks. Make sure you check with your student about the time frames. Travel is extraordinarily difficult this year, and minimizing travel in ways that we have never had to think about that before is what needs to be done. And so being extra thoughtful about that this year is necessary. If you have kids, planning family time is important, and considering how you explain what mom and dad has to do and why, and how you're going to set time aside for them is going to be an important planning thing. Next slide. We have resources. It's important that we know if students are struggling. Sometimes students know they're struggling and feel comfortable letting us know so that we can help. We know that the incidence of depression and anxiety is very high in medical students, and it will probably be more stressful in the next year than it's ever been before with our pandemic. If you have concerns, talk about it with your students. You may need to bring it up. They may not see that, that they are struggling in the ways that you can. So by all means, if you think there's a problem, talk about it with your student. Many resources are available to them. We've talked about their Learning Society Faculty Fellow in Chief. You will soon meet, and your students have already met, Drs. Judy Brady and Terry McGovern, who are our health and wellness band of help. We have Dr. Wanda Lipscomb, who you just met as the Associate Dean for Student Affairs. Dr. Erin Drake and her team in Academic Achievement are there to help. Dr. Robin DeMuth, Assistant Dean for Clinical Experiences, and Dr. Colleen Bush, Director of Clinical Experiences, and myself as your Associate Dean for Undergraduate Medical Education are resources. We have counseling and health services and a Student Parent Resource Center with a website address right there. Dr. Judy Brady is our Assistant Dean for Health and Wellness, and Dr. Terry McGovern is our Director, and they are located in both of our communities and are able to be accessed by your students, as well as all these other resources that you've got named on this slide. Go ahead to the next slide, please. In summary, it's an exciting 4 years. It's a difficult 4 years. It's a commitment to 60 to 80 hours a week, and sometimes more over 4 years. There's a great deal of new knowledge and skills and experiences that your students are going to gain. Connections and support from you and friends will be critical to their success. We care about their health and wellness and want to be available in any way that we can. We don't want anyone suffering in silence. And if you notice something, please, by all means, talk to your student about it and ask them to avail themselves of services. We are so glad to have had you and your students join our family. They are now a part of our family forever, stuck with us. And we will hopefully be available to you later today, as well as onward if you have questions or concerns. So welcome again. Hopefully that was helpful. And I am going to stop talking and see what questions may have accumulated in the chat.
I don't think we have any new questions right now.
Okay. All right. I think that the next thing that happens, there might be one more slide, actually. Is there another slide? It basically leads us to the student panel. Yes, there is one more slide. Go ahead and advance that. And it's over. There you go. We just wanted to show that picture because it's so adorable. So the next thing we will do, under the guidance of Dr. Julie Phillips, our Assistant Dean for Student Career and Professional Development, and Dr. Dina Wilbanks, who's our Coordinator of Career Education and Counseling, are going to promote our student panel and lead that discussion for you. So.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. And Dr. Wilbanks, if you want to stop your screen share, then we can see faces a little bit better, I think. We are very pleased to have a nice group of students here to speak with you about their experiences. My name is Julie Phillips. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Career and Professional Development, and I will be co-hosting the student panel. Dr. Wilbanks, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, I'm Dr. Dina Wilbanks. Like Dr. Wagner mentioned previously, I'm the Coordinator of Career Education and Counseling for Michigan State University's College of Human Medicine. And I will be helping your medical student adjust through the first 2 years of medical school as far as career guidance and counseling and exploring the different specialties that are available to them as a potential career choice down the road. So I love our students. I enjoy working with our students. They're my most favorite part about my job. So thank you for sharing your medical student with us over the next 4 years, and looking forward to partner with you in this journey.
So we have done this, I think, for maybe 10 years now in the College of Human Medicine, and we have found that the students are really the very best at answering questions about what it's like to be a student and how to best support students. So what I would like to do next is just give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves, and some of them also have a spouse or partner or family member here with them. So if the family member who's with them would also introduce themselves, that would be great. And students, I'm going to call on you just like how you appear on my screen, just to help us kind of move along. So if you could introduce yourself, tell us your name, tell us what year you're in medical school, tell us what community or campus you're in, and again, if the spouse or partner could also introduce themselves, that would be great. So Paige, why don't we start with you?
Hi guys, my name is Paige Kramer. I'm a second-year medical student here at CHM, and I am currently in East Lansing.
Thank you. Ada?
Hi, my name's Ada. I am about to start my 3rd year of medical school on Monday. I am in the Traverse City Rural Campus, but I'm starting surgery in Alpena. Just arrived at the community house in Alpena, which is a pretty amazing piece of architecture. And I just wanted to say I saw someone ask a question about being out of state. I'm from Kentucky and don't have any family in Michigan. So if you have questions about being out of state or being family from out of state, let me know.
Thank you, Ada. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen Tate. I'm a fourth year medical student, so I'm on this side of the fan. And I'm in the Lansing campus. I've been in Lansing all 4 years, and I'm also from out of state. All my family's either in California or my husband's family is in Texas, so I can speak to that a little bit. I'm married, and I have a now 4-year-old, so my son had just turned 1 when I started medical school. So if anyone has questions about, trying to balance a family and med school, I could try to help with that.
Thank you, Karen. Essie? Oh, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Essie Benedict. I'm a second-year medical student at East Lansing campus. I'm in the Moral 3 Learning Society. I'm a non-traditional student. I'm a wife, and actually we are our 15th year anniversary next week. And mom of 3, and decided to go back to school to continue my aspiration to become a doctor. So I live in Pontiac, Michigan with my family, and I commute to East Lansing when I have to.
And I'm Mark Benedict, also a MSU alumni, by the way.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Sharita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Sharita. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, but my husband and I, we actually just moved back to East Lansing from Philadelphia, where we were for a while. So I'm married. I don't have any children. Unfortunately, my husband's at work, so he couldn't be here today, but he left some notes. And I said I'm a second year, I believe, and it's East Lansing, and I'm in Williams 3.
Great. I live in Williamston too. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself? You're muted.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Urquhart, and I'm also about to start my 3rd year of medical school here in Grand Rapids on Monday. I moved to Michigan from Blacksburg, Virginia, where I was an emergency nurse for 7 years, and I've been married for almost 13 years, and I have 2 boys who are just about to start kindergarten and 2nd grade. So moving from out of state, my parents live out of state, my in-laws live in state, having 2 kids in public school, taking step 1 during peak lockdown. Anything you have questions about, I'm super open to talking about. And my husband and kids are here if you want to ask them any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Do they want to introduce themselves, or are they
Sure.
camera shy?
Hi, I'm Doug.
Hi, Doug.
Underneath the table here.
They're pretty shy. Come say
Okay,
hi.
that's fine.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for coming to our panel.
All right, next person.
Shatomi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Shatomi Kerboy. I'm a second-year student at the East Lansing campus, an M3 teammate of Essie Benedict, and I live in Flint, Michigan, and also commute to East Lansing. And this is my wife. She's joining me here.
I'm Crystal. I'm a dentist, and I work at the VA in Saginaw. So she told me more than double the drive that I do each way to school. We had a baby kind of, I think it was technically, I don't know if it was during the pandemic, before the lockdown in February. We're actually doing a nanny training day today.
So he's out on a walk with the nanny, but our son Ari is 6 months old.
Yep.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Radva, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Radwa Kujain. I'm a second-year medical student. I'm in the East Lansing campus. I commute from West Bloomfield because I live there with my husband, and we have a home there. We have 2 kids. One just turned 4 last week, and the other one is a year and like 16 months. So she was 3 months when we started this journey. Trying to think of whatever else. I can't, but he's a stammer, so he can introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Erica Jane. We've been married for about 9 years.
Yeah.
And very excited for this journey.
Thank you. Are there any students that I missed? Did I get everyone?
I believe you got everyone, Dr. Phillips.
All right, good, thank you. So we already have some questions in the chat, and I have some extra questions that I like to ask every year. The first one is, how can we help our child when they are out of state? So particularly those of you who live out of state, what did your parents or your family do that was helpful for you, or even friends or others in your life? What did they do that was helpful for you, even if they lived far away? Or what could they have done? Ada, you, I think, were going to say something about that. Do you have something in mind?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. I know there's other out-of-state students here too. I would say we've been doing a lot of Zoom calls lately, especially, you know, with travel restrictions right now. I think there was a couple times my first 2 years that my mom was able to come up and visit, and it was really nice to see her, but also just getting the encouraging texts, getting pictures from home, especially pictures of the dog. If you have pets at home, sending your student pictures of the pets, I found that to be uplifting. I think this year is the first year that we're talking about possibly me not coming home over the breaks because of 2-week quarantines, and also because I'll be in the hospital this year and don't want to expose any of my own family members. So, you know, we've been trying to figure that out, but having those conversations be open and feeling like they understand what risks are out there right now with the pandemic, with traveling, and being open about that communication has been helpful.
Anyone else who'd like to add to that?
I can add a little bit to that. It's definitely different being in COVID times and not being able to travel, but I think it's really helpful for any family who's here right now, just the fact that you're trying to learn about what our curriculum is, because it's different. It's not something that is easy to grasp. And, you know, we have all these acronyms and things. And so I thought it was really great that my mom really took the time to learn, you know, what is ECE, what's MCE, and just so I could talk to her, you know, freely about it. And she wanted to understand, oh, what does it mean that, you know, you only needed a 25% to pass that exam and you got a 40 something, you know, I'm like, that's a good thing, you know, when normally getting a 47 doesn't sound like a good percentage. And so I think, you know, just taking the time to understand what your family member is going through is really helpful. And even when I was waiting for my score for step 1, I had my mom on the phone in California. I was like, okay, I'm gonna enter the website, I'm gonna check my score. So just having someone that really understands it with you is helpful.
Thank you. We have a couple other questions in the chat. One person asked, to the married students, is there a good or a bad time to get married? What would the best or worst time to do that be? Sharita, you're smiling. Do you want to respond?
I can talk about the students in my class because despite COVID, I know 3 that got married this past summer and 2 that got married at the end of M1. So there's like 3 weeks between M1 and M2. So a lot of them scheduled like the Saturday after M1 ended, if they wanted to get married after M1. And then the rest of them had it throughout the summer, because once you take step 1, you have the summer off until, I'm assuming the schedule is going to be the same for students, but you have off until August 17th. So they had weddings scheduled in June and July after M2, depending on when they thought they would take step 1. And they still did their small ceremonies in their backyards and made it happen. So I guess those are the times I saw my classmates get married.
It sounds like some people are having a little trouble with sound. Students and family members, if you could just try to remember to speak up, that would be good. Any other comments on timing of weddings? People also ask, I'll just preempt it because it's probably going to come, timing of children. Any comments on timing of children? If you're so lucky as to be able to time that, which many people aren't.
I'm not a medical student. I'm the wife. And as far as timing of marriage, Shitomi listened to a whole bunch of podcasts, and he tried to tell me the summer after the first year was a good time, or he was trying to be strategic about it. And I was putting my foot down and said, no, you're going to marry me now before you start medical school. So I thought it was really nice to be able to have some months before he got into the really the intense time of medical school. And we have very traditional families in ourselves. We didn't live together beforehand. So for me, it was important to establish our marriage before he started medical school. And then as far as having children, for us, he was still in his first year, and we had our first child. I went to dental school, and it was unheard of for any women to have children during dental school, but we had so many men in our class who had children. So I'm kind of biased. I feel as a woman, it's really difficult to have them during schooling, but so many women on this panel have children already. So I'm not as skilled. But
I can talk a little bit about this too. Sorry for the background noise. We're actually at a staycation right now. But so I mean, my daughter was 3 months when we started, right? So she was pretty little, and that's kind of like the brutal phase, I'll call it. And so I think from 0 to like 5 or 6 months is really rough. Like sleep-wise, it's really tough, and it's tough for both parents. You know, whether you're the guy or the girl, it's going to be tough because you want to help as much as you can. And so that means nighttime feedings and like assisting, just being emotionally supportive. So I think that that's a tough period. I think that Samara and I have talked about like when we want to have like a third child, when we would do it. Because residency is brutal, and we all know that. Like they own you, you're gonna work like 80 hours a week potentially. And I have a lot of friends that are residents, and so does he. And so we know what that lifestyle is like. So I think if we did it, we would do it during like I think we said after taking step 1, like we could start trying, and then whenever it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't happen, it ends up being in residency. It is what it is. Like you can't really control it, kind of like you guys were just saying. So.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that from my experience too. I had a child as a resident, and I don't know if that is worse or better than doing it as a medical student. To a certain extent, I think it just happens when it happens, and you kind of make it work whenever things work out, you know.
Yeah, I would just say, if I could just add to that. So my son was a little bit older, you know, he had just turned 1, but we didn't have any family in the area. And so, you know, trying to find babysitters that we trusted for when he got sick, and, you know, neither my husband nor I, you know, could really afford to miss any more school or work or any at all. So, you know, making sure that you kind of have that set up or in place if you're planning on doing that, because especially if they're going to be in daycare for, you know, a big part of the day, they're going to get sick every 5 seconds. And so that was a big adjustment for us. I was able to stay home with him for the year before medical school, and then he got sick a bunch. So just making sure that you have extra support, not just the timing, but to help when baby's here.
I would also just say that from what I've read of all the policies, MSU is extremely flexible about taking a semester, a year off. So, and even half a semester. So if you needed to, I've seen a lot of students doing that with absolutely no repercussions and smoothly rejoining their curriculum or the next class up. So it's super something that you're worried about beforehand, but on the other side of things, I've only heard stories of people saying that it all worked out. So.
Yeah, and certainly we have had students take time off who've chosen to do that, and we try to be flexible and accommodating as much as we're able to with that. Someone asked, and I feel like I can answer this, but I'd like to hear the student's perspective first. Is it plausible for a student to come home for a brother's wedding over a weekend?
So,
talk about your life on weekends, like what weekends are like for you typically.
I personally did do a lot of studying on weekends, but I was also able to be free weekends that I needed to be to accommodate family or other events. The nice thing about the progress suite testing is that, you know, you're not trying to cram for a test at any point the next week. So, I mean, you should be accumulating knowledge over time, and taking a weekend off to be present to your family shouldn't derail your education. And if you feel like doing that is going to derail your education, then, you know, we have a lot of people on our academic support staff and student support staff that are also really helpful to talk to figure out how to balance that.
I would agree that you can take the time off. I had some, but like if you, like for me personally, I would just do the prep for the following week ahead of time, like before the weekend, if I knew. So I would like study additionally, so try to spend the extra time during the week. I won't say what my sleep pattern was like during that week, but I would just say that like I would spend extra time to do that so that I could spend the weekend with my family, or sometime like more recently, my husband and I celebrated an anniversary, and it was important for us to have a getaway. And so I just like prepare for that ahead of time.
I think those are both great opinions and really accurate descriptions of how students can arrange to take time off. With the pandemic, it's a little different. So for first-year students, the first few weeks of school, they won't be in any clinical settings, but after that, they'll be in mostly primary care office settings, and they'll be interacting with patients and other healthcare providers. So it's not, you know, a significant added risk, but there is that risk that you get from being in a medical setting, and it's kind of a balance. So you don't want to bring COVID home to your family, but you don't want to miss out on things. So having discussions with your student about their risk, and, you know, are the people at the wedding going to be wearing masks, and where are they going to stay when they're at home with you? So there's a lot of different things that go into making that decision in general, and especially now with the pandemic.
Sharita, did you want to add something? You're muted.
Oh, I was just saying that what Paige said was great.
Yeah. I think, I mean, all of us are in a situation where travel is really a thoughtful risk-benefit calculation, right? And some of you may know that the university has recommended that people traveling from high-risk areas quarantine for 2 weeks, which is something that certainly needs to be taken care of and taken into account, I think, when making travel plans. But some family events are really important, you know, and I think that ultimately we will help students think about how that would work and what the implications of it would be. Dr. Brady is probably the best person for an individual student to talk with about that, either Dr. Brady or Dr. McGovern, because they've been helping students navigate a lot of those decisions. Okay.
I'd like to add something to that.
Please.
So one thing I'd just like to add is you should always put your family first, regardless of whatever you're going through in medical school curriculum. Of course, you know, you have to keep in mind that you have a lot that you have to do through the, you know, through the semester, but something like your brother's wedding is very important. So if you have to plan ahead of time, then you have to do that just to be present at the wedding. The beauty of the curriculum is you can actually pace yourself. We don't have exams every month, every other week like other medical schools, so you can plan ahead to be present. So if it's important to you, you'll make it happen. And yeah, please go, it's important.
Thanks. Students, someone asked if you could speak about the difference between being a Lansing student and a Grand Rapids student, and the difference between the two campuses, which I realize is maybe hard to answer because none of you have been in both, right? But if you have any insights into that, that would be useful.
So the good thing about MSU and CHM specifically is that we're very integrated, and we have a lot of Zoom calls. So your large group activities and some other things during the week are combined with both campuses. You are a little separate, so you know, the East Lansing and Grand Rapids students don't interact as much. And there's different facilities. So the Secchia Center in Grand Rapids is a newer building, and it's gorgeous and has lots of windows. Not as applicable right now during the pandemic because there's not, we're not allowing students on campus right now. So really, you're not gonna see a whole bunch of difference in the education or the quality of education. I like to say that the campuses have different personalities. I think that my classmates in Grand Rapids and my classmates in East Lansing are different breeds of people, but I think that that just comes out of interacting with different medical students and different faculty members. And it's kind of fun when we do get to meet up with people from the different campuses. For example, I'm in the Leadership in Rural Medicine program, so we get the opportunity to interact with the Grand Rapids Leadership in Rural Medicine students, which is always a good time.
I think I'm the only person from Grand Rapids, if I was paying close enough attention. And we came here because my husband is a wastewater engineer and his job prospects were better in a bigger city, and it's also closer to his parents. So it's a bigger city. It's harder to navigate the public schools and the different districts. You might live like further away, although people in East Lansing maybe live even further away because it's possible to even live in a like rural area if you're over there in Lansing. The Lansing campus has all kinds of probably cultural events that are free through MSU, maybe not this year, but that I would have loved to have attended and been able, I don't know if they can go to the gym, they have campus medicine. Like I always felt like I wished I were in East Lansing, but we're here in Grand Rapids. The campus downtown is beautiful. It's seamlessly connected to a hospital. So you get to visit both of them before you come and kind of try to make a choice, but it's not really worth comparing them once you are where you are, because you don't get to switch.
So Dr. Wagner spoke a little bit about how coming to medical school is definitely a change in terms of workload, and often people need to adjust their study habits. And I was hoping that the students could talk a little bit about what that adjustment was like for you and about how you structure your time in order to kind of manage the workload of school, but also, you know, have some time to take care of yourself and be with your family. Could you speak to that a bit?
I always like this question because I have kind of a funny story. When I came to med school, everyone starts talking about their study plans, and you get perspectives from 192nd years to tell you their study plan, and then your 189 other classmates on your class tell you their study plan. And I was changing the resources I was using to study and my study plan at least every week, if not sometimes in the middle of the week. And I got to about Thanksgiving, and I mean, I was passing the test, I was doing fine academically, but I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel so disorganized. And one of my loved ones finally looked at me and said, have you tried sticking with a study plan for just more than 5 days? Just even 10 days. And I just thought, what a novel concept. And so I committed myself to one study plan from Thanksgiving break to Christmas break that was, you know, for me, I engaged better with the video platforms than I did textbooks. So I just picked a select number of resources and stuck with that for those 3 or 4 weeks. And once I started to tune out the white noise and just stick with what felt best for me, then things started to fall into place better and I felt more confident.
I agree what you're saying. Resource overload, I think, is a problem, and you're kind of, you know, you're unsure of how to navigate the curriculum, and so you're looking to other people. So I think I did something similar, but I would also like to add, and I think maybe you had mentioned this earlier, and another student did, but the Office of Academic Achievement, they have peer tutors. I ended up getting a tutor right at the end, or during intersessions, I think, so right at the end of my first year, and that was so fantastic, especially going through second year and getting ready to, second year is when you're really preparing for step one. First year, you're still kind of figuring out medical school, but every year really changes because it's different. First year, you're still figuring out medical school, you have your early clinical experience, but then second year, you're kind of balancing two full curriculums, it feels like. You have your rotational curriculum, and then you have your CHM curriculum, and so that feels very busy, and you're also studying for step one. And then when you get to third year, it changes every 4 weeks. Each clerkship is its own beast, and so I think it's helpful to have the Office of Academic Achievement or have a peer tutor, someone who's usually a class or two ahead of you, who's been there before and can really kind of hone to your individual learning style and help pick resources that work just for you. And you know that that they have experience in that to like help you be successful. So and then I became a tutor myself and was able to kind of pass that along to other class members. So it's a really great service. I highly recommend it.
I think something else to keep in mind too is that just knowing your study style. So for example, some people study really well early in the morning, and some study really well late in the evening, and some like to, go to the gym first or work out first, and then they can kind of sit down. So I think just trying to think about what is the best time of day and then plan your schedule around that. I also find that having a calendar is really helpful. And so I have an online calendar that kind of syncs with all my devices. That way I have access to it at any time. I don't have to worry about having a planner with me or something like that. And I don't necessarily put in, study block. I know some people do that and they find it to be helpful if they actually write study block and they block out a period of time, because visually then they see what they need to do. I just kind of know, so basically what I do is I try to study on now it's like I wake up at 6 or 7, but basically I'm done at 4 p.m. And then from 4 p.m. until kids' bedtime, which is around 7:30 now for both of them, I'm just hanging out with the kids. I put away my study stuff. That's my free time. So if you don't have kids, or if you have a spouse, then you could certainly just spend that time with them or relax or do whatever you want. And then once they go to sleep, if I have something that's really pressing that I need to do, then I'll finish it. That's due the next day. If I don't, then I try to force myself to just relax with my husband. If I have cards, a bunch of us do flashcards, then I'll kind of just passively do that while watching TV. But yeah, so I think just having a schedule and knowing where you're going to place your different activities is super helpful, because you're always going to feel like there's more that you can do. You're never going to feel like you finished. And so just kind of trying to be more task-based and just giving yourself a set period of time.
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
Go ahead, Shatomi.
No, I also think, adding on to what my colleagues have said, I had to change from being a sort of a nocturnist to realizing that this is not a sprint, as Dr. Wagner said, but a marathon. And when my body says it's time to sleep, I usually do better when I get that night's sleep versus pushing further. And just, it's not, as they say, high yield after that. But I can't emphasize enough how just getting regular sleep and attending to things like a dinner with my family versus just eating on the go, taking care of your body has been helpful as part of that schedule.
I just want to chime in as the opposite of everyone I felt in medical school in my class. I didn't have any structure, schedule, and always felt very disorganized, did things at the last minute, did things just when I needed to. For step one, for 4 weeks, I woke up every day at 4 o'clock and went to bed every night at 8 o'clock. I woke up at 4 o'clock, meditated, studied on a schedule, and had a babysitter for my kids. and a specific schedule. That's the only time in medical school that I felt like anything was structured or organized. And I'm still here and still like on track to get my goal. So yeah, know yourself and try not to beat yourself up if you're not a type A organized medical student, because we need all different personalities taking care of patients. And my personality is perfect for emergency medicine, which is what I'm planning to go into. But yeah, get all the advice for the structure and study plans and get the resources. But if it doesn't work out for you, just keep going and working and studying and like working hard. You got this. I saw a therapist every 2 weeks. That was something regular that I did. And one of the biggest things that she said to me was like, you got this far, like you can, if those things worked for you in the past, they'll work for you now. And it proved true for me. And then my last kind of mantra that I think about all the time is wherever you are, be there. So if you're with your kids, be with your kids. If you're with your husband or wife, be with your partner. And if you're studying, like, be studying, and don't try to be doing a bunch of different things at once. So just learning to be present and doing the things that need to be done is my best structure that I had.
I did have something to say, and kind of along the lines of what Sarah had said. So I'm a second-year medical student, and it took me a really long time kind of to figure out what my study strategy would be. So like Ada had said, like I was listening to what other people were doing and trying to see if it worked for me or not. And I just really like to try things until I figure out like how it would work for me. And so now I feel like I have something that kind of works for me a little bit better. But kind of what what Karen was saying is that like things are changing, and so you're constantly learning new material. Like what may have worked for you the first semester might not work for you the second semester. Intersessions is different. So just like be okay with change if it's going to help you. And I work with an academic coach now, and I always have even before I came here, and I found it to be the best thing for me. Even if it's just like an accountability partner to make sure that I'm following the planning that we made together.
One of the things you'll notice is that many of our students work with academic achievement and with academic coaching. It is not something that is just for students who are struggling, because the curriculum is hard for everybody. It's something that we really encourage everybody to engage with. All medical students are high achieving, but the curriculum is challenging. And I had a tutor when I was a medical student to help me with things, and it's totally something that we recommend and encourage. We don't want it to be stigmatized at all to need that coaching and in developing study skills, because often students, just because they are very smart and high achieving, when they get to medical school, they have to learn how to study, because in undergrad sometimes they didn't really need to that much, because undergrad's just not as hard. This is harder. It's harder work.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think one of the things I wanted to mention was that you kind of study differently, or most people do, at least. For me, that was a big thing going from undergrad to medical school. I used to take notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of like physical handwritten notes. And we find, a lot of us find at least, that we don't really have time to do that in medical school. Handwriting takes a lot of time, and paragraphs aren't something that you remember easily. So for students specifically, you're going to see a shift in how you study and how you look at information, and you kind of go into more active forms of learning. We talk about that a lot at CHM, and doing flashcards and practice questions and drawing pathways, which was a very big adjustment for me, and it took a while for me to figure that out.
Also, there's no lectures, so you can't take notes. Like, you have to participate. That's a big change for a lot of people.
Can you say more about that, Sarah? What do you mean there's no lectures? That seems crazy.
Like LGA, which is large group, I don't know what the A stands for.
Activity.
I was like Monday mornings the first year and Wednesday afternoons the second year is the only time you're together with your entire cohort. And it's 4 hours of content, but it's not, sometimes someone's talking according to some slides and maybe you can jot some notes down, but it's like usually participating with your small group who you sit with in quizzes, questions, cases. And then everything else is with a small group, cases, working through slides, writing stuff on the board, explaining things to each other. So you have to come in with your notes, I guess. But like when I was taking notes in other educational programs I've done, I would sit and take notes while someone talked. But I guess I would like watch lectures beforehand on some of the products that I purchased and maybe take notes, but I agree with Paige, like taking pages and pages of notes was also something I wasn't able to do because of the way that medical content is presented and learned at MSU.
There's a really strong emphasis on active learning.
Yeah, I don't know if you need me to
Go ahead,
add.
Essie. Sure.
Yeah, I love what everybody has said so far. I especially love what Sharita said about be willing to go with the flow and change. For me, prior to COVID, I thought I had a structure. You know, I got the kids ready for school, either dropped them off or we had a neighbor who was a driver that, you know, took them to school. And I drove to school for an hour and a half while listening to lectures, Board and Beyond, and Thoma, you know, one of those. And, you know, it was great for my 8 a.m. class. And then it came back in the evening. So we all kind of got home just about the same time because the kids also have extracurricular activities. So my husband after work takes them to the activities. And then we all kind of get home at the same time, spend the evening together. And then after they go to bed, I study. So that worked out prior to COVID. But since COVID, it was difficult trying to adjust. Being home, I didn't really have a structure. Sometimes I went to bed at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., you know, sometimes, but it just changed. There was no real consistent schedule, but I had to keep reminding myself to be kind to myself. Just make sure I study every day. As long as I'm putting in the time and the work, I'll be okay. Pace myself, just like Dr. Wagner said, and Shatomi also reiterated, which is it's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So, you know, just take your time, take care of yourself. If you're not good, you cannot really put in the energy that's required for you to succeed. So take very good care of yourself, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to your support system. You know, like I like to say, my husband is my superpower. You know, people see that I do all these things. I'm like, how do you do it? Well, if not for his support and the support of my other family members and friends, it's not gonna happen. So just reach out to people that love you and are invested in your journey, and you'll be okay.
I know that some of the students on the panel are parents themselves, and some of you might have other family members that you take care of. Could you speak a little bit about that experience and how you navigate being a caretaker when you're also a medical student?
What a wild adventure it's been for us. I'd have to say that I'd have to qualify my previous thing about sleep with saying I do get up several times in the night to feed my son. And those are 5 or 10 minute increments that are some of the most special time of my day because I don't see him sometimes when I'm studying. And so that's sometimes is part of my interaction. But I think to echo what Essie just said, I couldn't do what I do as a student without my wife's support. And a lot of it goes around the care for our son. She, for instance, has taken the lead in finding and training our nannies, and the childcare has been a huge help. But my son is very young, and I try to spend time with him each day, and for me that that is sort of my inspiration and something I look forward to. But I couldn't have done this without my wife, or I think we've realized it's really a web of people who are helping us, whether it's our in-laws or neighbors. Just like a 747 might have a crew, there's a team of people behind that prep it for each flight. And I'm realizing this is not just a marathon, but it's a team sport.
So I tapped Shitomi to talk about it, but he's, I didn't tap him to talk about me. I actually tapped him to talk about his mom. His mom has caregivers. And before Shitomi went into medical school, he was home with her most of the time. And then he had some help to alleviate some of the stress because he was working, applying to medical school, and, you know, just trying to have a little bit of freedom here and there because his mom is a fall risk. So Shitomi we had to figure out as we were about to get married and move for medical school, how that would look with his mother. And so in our scenario, we were thinking, okay, how do we be a married couple and have our little family, but also have a mother-in-law to take care of? So we went through a whole list of different options of, you know, trying to find housing that had an area that she could feel comfortable and that we could have both independent areas and joint areas. And we looked and we were thinking about that. And then it came down to her saying, I don't want to move. So we had to really respect that because, you know, she's a fall risk, her vision's not the best, and she's very familiar and she's a creature of habit with where she was. So we had to adjust our plans and be open to that. And I think that's been a really big thing is you have one notion of how things are going to go and then realizing, will it work that way, and being open to changing it, even if you do go down one path, maybe changing it another way. So we have kept her in her home. We've installed cameras to make sure if she does fall or have any incidents that we can monitor and check in on her at night. And then we have care for her. And we've upped that care as Shitomi and I are living away from her. So that has worked for our family, but Shitomi has a lot that he balances, and he still is, you know, taking the time to schedule PT for his mother and do other things, while still helping me like with care for Ari or cleaning the house or cooking. So I don't know how he does it all, but I'm hearing that with a lot of the panel that they carry many, many roles. So I think you just kind of figure it out for yourself.
I could talk a little bit about third year maybe, because I think I'm the only fourth year on this panel. So as far as balancing home life with being in the hospital, because it's significantly more time away from home, a lot more clinical hours. Something that helped me just for my peace of mind, I got a smartwatch. So that way, if I was in the hospital and daycare had to call, I told them, please call my husband first. But if they couldn't get a hold of him, then to call me. And it was, it sounds silly, but it was just so much easier for me to just, you know, turn my wrist and see, okay, whoever's calling me, it's not the childcare, so they can just wait. So just to give me that peace of mind, because if I felt my phone buzzing in my pocket, I might be, you know, worrying about worst case scenarios. And like Sarah was saying, it's important to be present, where especially, you know, when you're in your clinical time or in the operating room and things like that, you have to be present, but knowing that, you know, I still have this responsibility outside of my clinical time. So that was just like a little gadget that gave me some peace of mind and helped me get through those long days, the 24-hour shifts, the night shifts, the long day shifts. And so that was really helpful. Rodwa, just like you, we have I have a calendar, so I put all my shifts in the calendar that I share with my husband, so he knows, 1 month at a time for that clerkship. You know, okay, when am I working weekends? When am I on nights? When am I on my 24-hour shift? And pre-COVID, sometimes we'd have a family member fly in for some of those hard weeks, if they could come for a couple of days to kind of break it up and give my husband some help, because he's also working full time. So a couple of times we were able to do that, but I think you really you adjust your routine for whatever that month is. Even though my son had his regular routine, you know, he has bath and books and bed at the same time, my schedule changed. And so just talking to him ahead of time, being, telling him, okay, mommy's not going to be home in the morning, but after, when I get home, we can go do this. So now that he's a little bit older, I can kind of set expectations with him. And so it's a lot of talking and explaining and like, the other parents have said, just trying to be present when you can.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have brought up like really great points for, daycare, childcare, parent care, and things that are unexpected will inevitably happen in the 4 years that you're a medical student, because that's just how life is. It doesn't really care what you're doing. So, I mean, I've had to juggle like health issues. My mom had to have emergent surgery in October, in the beginning of October. That was like a month after we started. My dad had to have surgery like earlier this year, and it was like around the COVID stuff. And so, and I'm the only medical person in our family, and I have medical experience before med school anyway. So they kind of just like turned to me to be like, well, what should we do, or where should we go? And they want me there with them at the consults. And, that's something that Essie kind of touched on, is putting family first. And also Dr. Wagner said, you can have it all, but not all at the same time. I think that's like a very perfect description of life in general, but like also med school. Like there's weeks where you're going to feel like you're killing it as a parent or as a spouse. And then there's other weeks where you're going to feel like you're really neglecting everybody except for MSU. And I think, kind of like what everybody has said, just like being kind to yourself and knowing that you're going through different seasons and it's rapidly changing, and just being okay with that. And just do your best to kind of look ahead and try to plan ahead. I know like not everybody plans, kind of like Sarah was saying. And she kind of focuses on like being present. And I think that's also 100% true. Like my kid who's 4 is not going to appreciate if I'm sitting with him and I'm like trying to read or study, and I'm also trying to hang out with him and play with him. So I think that being present is like a very, very important piece to trying to do multiple things, no matter what it is that you're doing, just like trying to be present for that thing in that moment. And I mean, like, because my husband's family lives like probably 5 minutes away from us. And so we have lots of cousins and whatever. But then COVID happened. And so then there was like the daycare issue of figuring out daycare with COVID, but I was still a student and I still had to attend class and I still had to study. Whereas a lot of people maybe like stayed home from work. And I was fortunate that Sammer was able to, he was off because there was no work to be done, but he was with the kids for about 6 to 8 weeks. So sometimes you're just going to have stuff thrown at you. And I think it's important to not get too caught up and flustered and just kind of think about, okay, what are my options? Kind of like Shatomi and his wife are saying, like just looking at all of your options, weighing things out, and then trying something and seeing how it goes.
I think that's also the nice part of the curriculum too, is that, like as we said before with the progress testing, you're not having to cram for a test. When life happens, it's okay. I had to have surgery, I think 5 weeks into med school that I wasn't expecting, and missed our first week studying the immune system. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But the way that our curriculum is set up, we spiral back around to topics all the time. And, I kind of basically missed a week and then was able to just pick up and keep going because we continued to hit on topics and I wasn't cramming for a test. So I think if there was any curriculum set up in any med school that was designed for life to happen and it to be okay, it would be this one.
I definitely agree with that. My son was admitted to the hospital last year, and we had snow days where the kids didn't have school, but I had to continue going, and you never know, something's going to happen. But having a backup plan for your backup plan, like thinking through what would happen if this got canceled? Who would we call? And having people lined up and just kind of having an emergency plan for different things really helps when those things inevitably go wrong. And also MSU has been really flexible. So I had to be absent from a lot of MCE shifts, but I had makeup assignments to do, and I was never felt like shamed or ridiculed for having to be absent or miss for my family. There were a lot of times when I emailed my curricular assistants like pretty much every 2 or 4 weeks. Like I need my schedule because I have to turn in my childcare calendar. And they were so kind, giving me as much information as possible so that I could get childcare planned. So a lot of the staff at MSU have kids too. So whereas your classmates might not get it, your curricular assistants and faculty do get it, what it's like to have to balance caregiving and family. So just reach out. Like, don't be sitting there mad that you don't have your schedule or know what to do. Like, just email them, and they've been really helpful and flexible. And then the fact that we don't have a test on Friday, like, doesn't make me force me to choose between family and school. I can choose my family when I need to and make up the school later, most of the time, except for step 1.
We haven't heard very much from the spouses, and I wondered if the spouses and partners that are on the call, if there's any advice that you would like to share for spouses or partners who might be listening today. Mark, do you want to start, since I see your face?
The only thing I was really going to say on the topic, so before medical school even started, we kind of did test run with school and getting things acclimated. And we made an agreement that there are a lot of tasks that I'm going to have to take on. And every time things get tough, I try and go back to remember this was what we agreed to, and this is the goal. And my goal was to try and support her and the heavy load she's taking on as much as possible. So the best example would be, so we have 3 kids. At the time it was 2 elementary, 1 middle school. So once COVID happened and it became learning, I wasn't trying to say, okay, let's figure out how we're going to do this. I already agreed that I was going to take on a lot of this. So I set up teaching stations for the kids. I made sure I was able to work remotely and set up their class schedules so that we could handle all of them at the same time without burdening her with the things that she was taking on. So it's a matter of regularly remembering what you originally agreed to and trying to keep to that agreement and giving her a heads up. Look, this is where I'm at right now. I'm a little bit stressed, so we need to work something else out for the moment, and then we get back on schedule. But always keeping in mind what the long-term goal was and what you want to do to accomplish it, and trying to be as supportive as possible. And I've basically been trying to be a shield as much as possible. So when the kids come up to distract, when I know she's doing a Zoom or trying to finish studying or going through a subject, I try to block them. Sometimes I am tackling them, but to get them out of the way so I can make sure that we're back on track and she's able to complete what she wants. And then when I know she has a break, I will send them all up at once. And then I get a few minutes break while they deal with her, and then I run off.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Any other partners have anything they want to add? I'm Radwa's partner. I apologize. I cannot remember your name.
Sammer.
Thank you.
So, Radwa's always been ambitious. This isn't our first rodeo with her in school. When we first got married, she got into PA school at Western. So literally like the first year of our marriage, she was in Kalamazoo and I was in Detroit. We were commuting. We've always had our eyes on the prize, and I've always been supportive, and I still am. So I just say it's a lot of patience, a lot of dedication. I see how much this means to her, and I couldn't be more proud that she's able to do this and make these sacrifices. Granted, it's a sacrifice on the household, but I know to her it's really tough juggling between the children, our marriage, being a daughter, a friend. So I make sure that, she has her social time, she has our time, she has time with the kids. I try not to fight, and especially when we do fight, I try not to mention the whole med school thing, because I know that just might, that might dig, and I don't want to be that spouse that digs or make her resent what she's doing. And I made it a point where for example, every Friday night, it's date night. No matter what's going on, even if it's a cup of coffee with COVID going on, we just go down the street, grab a cup of coffee. or we just watch something at home when the kids go to bed. I think it's important to balance everything, not prioritize one over another, just balance everything to the best of your abilities.
You're rude.
One thing he was my boyfriend then, but he's my husband now. One thing he did that really helps me, that he still kind of does actually, is in our marriage, is kind of make me have fun and plan the fun stuff, because I was often so tired that I couldn't figure out what movie we were going to go to. I couldn't even think that much about what to do. And he would just say so on Friday, we're going to take 3 hours off and I'm going to plan it and take it. And that helps me a lot. I still need him to do that because I'm still not very good at taking time off to have fun, but it's been useful. We are starting to run close on our time, but I want to just invite you, if you have any closing remarks or advice, either for incoming students or family members who are supporting students, it would be wonderful to hear it. I can call on you, or maybe I'll just let you talk freely and see what you come up with. Any closing thoughts or advice for either students or for families?
I'll start. I think it's important to know that even though you're medical school, it's still your life. And so becoming a physician is a really long journey. And so you don't want to push off everything in your life while you're going through medical school and then going to residency, just so you're not resentful of the process. And so I think that remembering that you're human as well is important. And so I always think about that kind of in the back of my mind, especially when really big events come, or like having a family and those type of things, especially for me being a non-traditional student. And also, whatever you're feeling is okay. You'll go through a lot of different varying emotions, and there's no right way to feel, and there's no right way to be a medical student. MSU has a lot of wonderful faculty that really care and are open, and so just always reach out if you need to. And there'll be even if you don't know the person to reach out to, that person you reach out to will know the person that you need to connect to. So I would just say don't hesitate to do that, especially since we're going through Zoom. It would be a good way to make sure that you're still connected if you need
I
Yeah,
found, oh, sorry.
No, go for it. I
I
always
found,
love hearing what you have to say.
someone who's a 4th year now in Grand Rapids, who is my confidant and mentor. So if anyone feels like they might connect with me, please look me up and email me. I would be happy to answer all your questions. It's been really helpful. The panels that MSU does during orientation are nice, but for advice for step 1 and step 2, but it doesn't apply to me. So I just go to her and I'm like, how do you do it as a mom? She has 4 kids, and it's just different than the majority of students who don't have kids. So email me, email someone from this panel. Dr. Brady and Dr. McGovern have both sat and listened to me vent in confidence when I felt like things weren't set up for me as a parent, and that's been super helpful. They are the kindest, most helpful resources that I have found at the school, that won't transfer your maybe temporary negative energy onto faculty or the rest of the program. And then, just reach out for help is probably my biggest tip. Don't be that one parent. I'm the only mom in my class in Grand Rapids. Don't be confined to that role and feel alone, because you're not. And there's people out there who will connect and help you. But do realize that nothing is set up for you as and maybe non-traditional adult and parent. It's set up for 20-something-year-olds, not 30-something-year-olds. So it takes some creativity to make it work for you, but you got this far. And so but just keep hanging on to that. Like, it's really, really hard to make it this far.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think if, and this touches on what you all have said too with reaching out for help, but I think that this is the place to be to get support to make life and medical school work together. I think Dr. Brady has texted or called me before like 9:30 at night or even 11 p.m. to check in when I was going through something really difficult. Or I know there was a time where one evening I thought I was going to need to get on a plane and fly out to be with my family for a family medical emergency. And I mean, they pretty much said, figure it out, go, you know, we'll email anyone that needs to know and figure this out. So they're so supportive. And so if there was a place to be when life and med school seem to be, you know, competing forces, then I would say you're in the right place.
Yeah, very good points everyone has made. I would also like to add that, you know, reach out to your Learning Society group. They are your brothers and sisters during med school, really. Shatomi is in my Learning Society group, and he will attest to how we always are there for each other. We celebrate birthdays together, anniversaries, events, and we're just, you know, always there for each other and covering for each other. Even the non-traditional students, Radwa, Shatomi, Sharita, we all text and reach out to each other all the time. And and it's been very, very helpful. So reach out to those that are in similar situations as you. Also, you can reach out to your big sibs if you have big sibs. They're there for you to guide you through your first year and hopefully beyond. Also, oh my gosh, the deans, the faculty, the staff, oh, they've been awesome. You know, like Ada said, even Dr. Brady, I think the last call we had was over an hour and a half, and it was very, very encouraging and awesome. Dr. Lipscomb, you know, communicate all the time. Dr. Wilbanks, she's always the resource person. She's always available for you when you need her. So reach out to them. They respond to emails very quickly, and they will help you through and guide you as you need them. And also all the other faculty. Mrs. Fowler, she was on vacation and she called me to set up a schedule for an event we're having, even while on vacation. So that's how committed they are to students. So just reach out to you, faculty, staff, and everyone, and they'll be there for you as you need them. Take very good care of your mental health. It's very important. I know it's difficult for us right now to be on Zoom all the time. And it's very challenging, even for us in second year that had a good first year where we're meeting. But just take good care of yourself. I didn't know how difficult it was for others because I thought, you know, I have family that I talk to all the time, but there's students that just by themselves, they don't have anyone, you know, with them, and they're just on Zoom all day. So that's where the family and friends can come in and help them and be a sounding board, like Dr. Wagner said earlier, and encourage them through the process. Take breaks as you need them. You don't have to study all day, all the time. If you need a break just to unwind and take a breather, please do so. Find out 1 or 2 people in your class that you can rely on and talk to and cry if you have to, and just, you know, vent to them if you need to. And that would be very helpful. So just reach out as much as you can. There are people that are there willing to help.
Thank you.
I 100% agree with everything Essie said. My class is amazing, and I think that's a general feeling I have about CHM. We have a very supportive, community-based environment, and the students feel that way too. So I actually picked CHM because when I talked with first year and second year students, they were so happy. And, you know, med school's hard, and it's always going to be hard. And, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, but we have so much support here in terms of mental health, which is super important. you know, I openly talk about my mental health and going to counseling with my small group. And I think our class really wants everybody to be successful, so we share resources. And one of my classmates made a multi-thousand card anatomy flashcard deck to help us study for our anatomy capstones last year. And I have some amazing mentors, and Ada's one of them. And I think that, you know, reaching out to the people who have been where you are and who know even any small tips on how to get through it is huge. Get some counseling, and whether you think you need it or not, you're going to, because medical school is hard. It's crazy what just talking to somebody who can, you know, work through your thought processes with you, whether you're, you know, you're struggling with learning a topic, or with some life changes, with being a parent, or having a spouse and not being able to see them, being away from your family. You know, I think counseling is a very important thing. And I think it's something that we really normalize here, which is really great.
I don't have much to add because everyone just hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think I would just reemphasize the point that that you're really just embraced by the school as soon as you start orientation in your very first year, and it just continues. I still can call my faculty fellow from first and second year, even though I'm a fourth year now, and my tutor from second year is now a resident, and he's still helping me because he's in the same specialty path that I'm pursuing. And my big sib from when I was a first year, I was on her virtual baby shower just before this. And so it's really, we really are a community and a family. And to those who are starting, I would just say that you can do it, that it's going to be hard, but you have just an amazing network that you're stepping into. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, that someone has been in a similar situation. So just reach out and find them, like everyone's already said, but you're going to do great.
I don't really have much to add. I think everybody has pretty much said everything. And, I think it's a long journey, but it's worth it. I would like to think in the end. And so just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you'll get there before you know it.
It is honestly just such a pleasure to hear you guys and to see your faces. For some of you, it feels like it's been too long. Dr.
I don't
Lipscomb,
know if I'm the only one here who had Dr. B. She's retired now. She was in Grand Rapids, like in neuroanatomy, but her quote to us at the beginning of first year was, or it was like a joke, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And she gave everyone a little tiny elephant. And that's been on my mind a lot lately because of the third year clerkships. And I'm just gonna do them one bite at a time.
Well, we really want to thank all of you for spending time with us today. There are a couple of comments in the chat. We'll be recording the chat. We'll be recording the session. And I have to say, I stayed off screen, but the whole time I'm like clapping and smiling and saying, oh yes, that's so good. Everyone knows this. The College of Human Medicine really does try to operate like we're this big extended family. And for those of you who are thinking about how will life be for your loved one when they are a part of this family, I think you've just heard some phenomenal ways in which you can make those connections. A lot today that we've talked about has been about students who maybe have partners and spouses and families, but really all of the advice is for everyone. So, little things like Sharita put in the chat, I think gift cards are nice. So for everyone to just remember that, anything that you can do to send to your loved one, your special person, to just sort of brighten their day, help them out. The comment about my parents send us a box of frozen Alaskan salmon every 6 weeks. All those things are the things that help us all just be functional. And this is definitely a journey. It is not, you know, with a lot of little road stops as you go along. So we just thank all of you for being here with us. Through the Office of Student Affairs and Services, just start with someone. I think that's probably the best advice everyone has said. Whomever it is you feel comfortable linking with, just raise the question, just do the outreach. And don't be concerned if you know if it's the right person or not, because all of us should know who the right people are, and we can get you in contact with others. I'd like to thank Dr. Phillips for doing a phenomenal job of this narration of this panel. I want to thank all of the students who gave up time on a sunny Saturday afternoon in Michigan, which is something that we don't get all the time. But for sharing that with family and students in the entering class. I'd like to thank Dr. Will Banks, who is off the screen, but who was our kind of backup maestro, making sure that we had panelists and we had all our pieces together. And as you all will learn, is many of the things that we do will always run through Amy Fowler. Amy's our coordinator of student activities, and she's sort of like that glue. When in doubt, send an email to Amy. She'll know if it's not the right place, she'll get it to you. And I'd like to thank Sherry Linneman, who's our supervisor in our office, for helping us make all the pieces come together. We do have a virtual white coat tomorrow, yay! So we look forward to everyone being a part of that. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Phillips.
I don't think I have very much to add. Thank you everybody for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at our White Coat celebration. Thank you, student panelists. You guys were wonderful. We love you.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good luck, everybody, and congratulations.